The research station hung in the darkness above Neptune like a silver flower. Inside, Dr. Hae-jin watched the cryopod with all four of her eyes. Her insect-like body trembled with excitement. After 3 months of careful work, they were finally ready to wake the human. Humans were extinct. Everyone in the galaxy knew this. Earth had died almost 2,000 years ago when its sun released a wave of radiation that cooked the entire planet. No human had survived. But here, buried deep under the ice of Triton, they had found something impossible. A facility, a cryo chamber, and inside, a perfectly preserved human male. Captain Dong-woo stood beside her, his blue skin gleaming under the medical bay lights. His species, the Valerians, lived in water most of their lives. Being on a space station was uncomfortable for him. But this discovery was too important to miss. The Coalition had never seen a real human before. Only bones, only ruins, only stories about the violent species that once ruled Earth. "Begin the thaw sequence," Hae-jin said. Her translator converted her clicking sounds into words the others could understand. The technicians worked at their stations. The cryopod began to hum. Inside, through the frosted glass, they could see him. The human. His skin was tan, his hair black, his body muscular in a way that seemed almost aggressive. The records they found with him said his name was Tae-ho, age 34 when frozen. Military service, special operations, whatever that meant. "His cellular activity is increasing," one technician reported. "Faster than projected." Hae-jin leaned closer. The readings confused her. His cells should take weeks to fully revive. Instead, they were firing back to life like someone had flipped a switch. His heart, which should restart slowly and carefully, suddenly began to beat. Strong, steady, powerful. "That's not normal," Dong-woo said quietly. "No," Hae-jin agreed. "It's not." The pod opened with a hiss of ancient air. Tae-ho lay still for exactly 3 seconds. Then his eyes snapped open. They were dark brown, almost black, and they moved with frightening speed. Left, right, up, down. Processing everything. The medical sensors around him beeped wildly as his body temperature rose, his breathing stabilized, and his muscles began to respond. "Hello," Hae-jin said in the human language. They had studied it from old records. "You are safe. We are friends." Tae-ho's eyes locked onto her. For a moment, she felt like prey being studied by a predator. Then something changed in his expression. Confusion, concern. He tried to sit up and the restraints held him. Gentle restraints meant only to keep him safe while he recovered. He looked at the restraints, looked at his arms. Then, without apparent effort, he tensed his muscles and the restraints snapped. The sound echoed in the medical bay. Everyone froze. Tae-ho held up his hands, showing his palms. A universal gesture. "Sorry," he said. His voice was rough from disuse, but clear. "Didn't mean to break anything. Where am I?" Over the next hours, they told him everything. Earth was gone. Humanity was extinct. He had been frozen for 1,758 years. The galaxy was now ruled by the Galactic Coalition, a peaceful union of 12 species who had never known war. Tae-ho listened to all of this without showing much emotion. He asked questions. Good questions. Smart questions. Questions that made Hae-jin realize this human was far more intelligent than their estimates suggested. He learned their common language in 3 hours by linking to their neural learning system, a process that took most species months, he completed before lunch. "Your recovery is remarkable," Hae-jin told him as they ran more tests. "Your body heals damage from the cryo-freeze faster than our best medical technology." Tae-ho shrugged. "Good metabolism, I guess." But it was more than that. They watched through scanners as his tissue regenerated in real time, watched as minor cellular damage simply fixed itself. His bone density was 3 times what their models predicted. His muscle fibers were packed so efficiently, it seemed impossible. His brain activity showed patterns they had never seen before. Captain Dongwu reviewed the data that night in his office. He felt cold, which was unusual for a Valerian. The human was recovering too fast, moving too well, learning too quickly. During the physical assessment, Taeho had accidentally bumped into a wall. The wall panel had cracked. Taeho hadn't even noticed. Dongwu pulled up the old Earth records they had found. He read about human history and felt his blood chill further. Humans had spent their entire existence fighting. Fighting nature. Fighting animals. Fighting each other. Their entire civilization was built on conflict. They hunted animals that could kill them. They lived in environments that ranged from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. They survived diseases that would wipe out entire coalition worlds. Earth was what the scientists called a death world, a planet so hostile that only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable could survive. And humans had been the apex species there, the top predator. "What have we brought back to life?" Dongwu whispered to himself. In the medical bay, Taeho sat on his bed and looked out the window at space. He understood the situation. He was the last human. Everyone he knew was dead. His world was dead. His species was extinct. He was alone in a galaxy full of aliens who looked at him like he was a museum display. But that wasn't what worried him. What worried him was how they looked at him when they thought he wasn't watching. They were afraid. He could see it in how they moved around him, how they never turned their backs, how security personnel stood a little too far away. He had been awake for one day, and already they feared him. And the worst part was that he understood why. During the assessment, when he had broken the restraint by accident, he had seen their faces, seen their shock. These were peaceful beings living in a peaceful time. They had probably never seen real violence, never had to fight for survival. And here he was, a soldier, a warrior, someone trained to kill efficiently and effectively, someone whose body was designed by millions of years of evolution to survive on a planet that tried to kill everything on it. He was a weapon that walked and talked, and weapons, even friendly ones, made people nervous. Taeho sighed and lay back on the bed. It was too soft. Coalition species preferred comfort. He preferred something firm, something that kept him ready. Even in sleep, part of him was always alert, always ready. Outside his window, Neptune turned slowly in the void. Somewhere beyond it was Earth. Dead Earth. Home. He closed his eyes but didn't really sleep. Old habits died hard. Part of him listened to every sound, tracked every movement in the station, monitored threats that didn't exist. Tomorrow, they would run more tests. Tomorrow, they would ask more questions. Tomorrow, they would try to understand what it meant to be human. Taeho wasn't sure he could explain it to them, wasn't sure they would understand. How do you explain violence to someone who has never known it? How do you explain the instinct to fight to species that only know peace? He didn't have answers. But he knew one thing for certain. They had thawed him out, expecting to find a curiosity, a relic, a piece of history to study and understand. What they got instead was something they had no framework for, something their peaceful galaxy had never encountered. They got a human, and whether they realized it or not, that changed everything. The testing began on day 3. Taeho stood in the assessment chamber while coalition scientists prepared their equipment. Dr. Hyjin explained that they needed to understand human capabilities, strength, speed, endurance, intelligence, all standard measurements they did for every species. Taeho agreed easily. He was curious, too. He had no idea how he compared to these aliens. In his time, humans only competed with other humans. Now he was the only one left. The first test was simple grip strength. A machine measured how hard he could squeeze. The technician, a small gray creature named Bong Su, showed him the device, and explained the process. Average coalition citizen could manage about 60 units of pressure. Their strongest security personnel hit around 120. Taeho squeezed the device casually. The number climbed. 100, 200, 300. He wasn't even trying hard. He squeezed a bit more. 470 units. The machine beeped a warning. He stopped. Bong-su stared at the reading. "Please wait," he said, and scurried away to get Dr. Hye-jin. When she arrived, they made Taeho repeat the test. Same result. She asked him to try his maximum strength. Taeho shrugged and squeezed hard. The machine screamed. 630 units. The metal casing cracked. "I can go harder," Taeho offered, "but I think I'll break it." Hye-jin made notes with her multiple limbs, writing furiously. "Yes, no, don't break it. This is already far beyond our projections." The tests continued. Reaction time tests where Taeho had to press buttons when lights flashed. The machine could barely keep up with him. His responses came so fast, the equipment logged them as errors at first, assuming the sensors were malfunctioning. Running speed, where he moved so quickly the monitoring system lost track of him twice. Endurance testing, where he ran for 3 hours straight before they finally asked him to stop, not because he was tired, but because they had enough data. By afternoon, Nari arrived. She was the chief of Coalition Security, a being made of living crystal that reflected light in rainbow patterns. Her species, the Tholians, were known for being logical and careful. She did not like what she saw in the test results. "This is problematic," she said, her voice like wind chimes. "One human has physical capabilities exceeding our entire security force." "He's not dangerous," Hye-jin protested. "He's been completely cooperative." "A nuclear reactor is cooperative too," Nari replied, "until it isn't." They brought in Woo Jin, a Valerian historian who had spent his life studying extinct humanity. He was old, his blue skin faded to pale aqua, but his mind was sharp. He had read every human record the Coalition had recovered. He knew things about Earth that made him wake up at night in fear. Woo Jin explained it to the assembly of scientists and security personnel. Earth was a death world. Most coalition species evolved on gentle planets with mild weather, few predators, and abundant food. Earth was a nightmare in comparison. Extreme temperatures, deadly animals, diseases that killed with terrifying efficiency, natural disasters that wiped out entire regions. Humans evolved to survive all of that, Woo Jin said. Their bodies are built for a hostile environment. High bone density to survive impacts, efficient healing to recover from injuries, the ability to regulate temperature in extreme heat and cold. They could survive on less water than most species. They could eat a wider variety of foods. They could run for hours, tracking prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. He pulled up images of Earth animals. Lions, bears, sharks, crocodiles. Humans shared their planet with these, and they won. They became the dominant species not because they were the biggest or strongest or fastest, but because they were the most adaptable, the most persistent, the most willing to do whatever it took to survive. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They were also warriors, Woo Jin continued quietly. Human history is filled with conflict. They fought each other constantly, developed sophisticated weapons and strategies, created martial arts and combat systems. War was so common in their culture, they had entire industries built around it. Nari's crystalline body seemed to darken. And we woke one up. The next day, they ran combat assessments. Taeho was reluctant. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he said. "It's just simulations," Nari assured him. "Computer-generated scenarios. No one gets hurt." The first simulation was a simple self-defense scenario. 3 armed attackers, stun weapons, moderate threat level. The Coalition security training program used it to teach basic awareness. Taeho was disarmed and surrounded as programmed. The simulation attackers moved in. What happened next took exactly 2.4 seconds. Taeho moved like liquid lightning. He redirected the first attacker's weapon, used the second attacker as a shield, and struck the third in a joint that made them collapse. Before anyone watching could process it, all three simulation attackers were disabled. "Reset," Nari said. "Higher difficulty." They ran it again. 6 attackers, advanced weapons, military-grade threat assessment. Taeho took slightly longer this time. 4 seconds. He used the environment, throwing objects, creating angles, moving in ways that made it impossible for multiple attackers to engage him simultaneously. Reset. Maximum difficulty. 12 attackers, armored, various weapons, tactical coordination. The scenario was designed to be impossible, meant to show trainees that retreat was sometimes necessary. Taeho studied the simulation for 3 seconds before it started. When it began, he didn't fight the way coalition members expected. He was brutal, efficient, ruthless. He struck at weak points, used opponents' weapons against them, created chaos in their formation. When it ended, all 12 attackers were down. Taeho hadn't received a single hit. Time elapsed. 9 seconds. The observers sat in stunned silence. "Run it again," someone whispered. "That can't be real." They ran it 5 more times. Different scenarios, different attackers, different environments. The result was always the same. Taeho won, always. After the last test, Nari approached him in the simulation chamber. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Taeho looked tired, not physically, but emotionally. "Military training, special operations, but honestly, most of it is just instinct. Humans are good at violence. It's not something I'm proud of. It's just what we are." That evening, Nari called an emergency council meeting. Representatives from all 12 coalition species gathered via hologram to review the data. They watched the combat simulations, reviewed the physical assessments, read Wu Jin's reports on human history. The debate was intense. Some argued Taeho should be refrozen. Too dangerous. Too powerful. Others said he deserved freedom. He hadn't done anything wrong. A few suggested sending him to an isolated planet where he couldn't threaten anyone. Taeho learned about the meeting from Jin, who felt guilty keeping it secret. He wasn't angry. He understood their fear. In their position, he might feel the same way. "I'll volunteer for isolation," he told her. "I don't want to scare anyone. I don't want to be a threat." Jin's compound eyes glistened with something that might have been tears in her species. "You're not a threat. You're a person. A good person. This isn't fair." "Fair doesn't matter," Taeho said gently. "Reality matters. And the reality is I'm something this galaxy isn't ready for. I'm a weapon that walks and talks. Even if I never hurt anyone, the potential is always there." "They have every right to be afraid." Before the council could vote on his fate, the alarms began to sound. Emergency broadcasts flooded every channel. Coalition border stations were under attack. Unknown hostiles. Massive casualties. Multiple colonies going dark. Something had found the coalition, and it was hungry. The broadcasts showed nightmares. Captain Dong-Wu watched the footage from the border colonies with growing horror. The attackers called themselves the Devourers, and the name was fitting. They consumed everything, absorbed it, turned it into more of themselves. They were biomechanical creatures, part living tissue and part advanced machinery. Some were small, the size of dogs. Others towered over buildings. All of them were designed for one purpose: war. They moved with terrible efficiency, tearing through coalition defenses like paper. The coalition had 12 species and thousands of worlds, but they had something crucial missing. They had no real military. Why would they? The galaxy had been at peace for over 1,000 years. Their security forces were trained to handle disputes and rescue operations, not combat. Their ships had shields and some basic weapons, but nothing designed to kill efficiently. The Devourers had come from beyond the galaxy, from the dark space between star clusters. They had consumed 17 other galaxies before finding this one. And now they were here. Within 2 weeks, 12 colonies fell silent. The Coalition fleet tried to fight back. It went poorly. Their weapons, designed to stun and disable, barely scratched the Devourers' armor. Their tactics, based on peaceful resolution and minimal force, were useless against an enemy that didn't negotiate. Young Me, a Valerian diplomat, watched the battle feeds from Coalition Command. She had spent her entire life solving problems through conversation and compromise. Now she watched soldiers die because talking to the Devourers was impossible. They didn't communicate. They just consumed. A particularly horrible feed showed a Coalition defense team on the colony world of Threshold 9. 20 soldiers with stun weapons facing 3 Devourer shock troops. The Devourers were huge, each one 3 meters tall, covered in regenerating armor that fixed itself as fast as it was damaged. They had plasma weapons grafted directly into their arms. The Coalition soldiers fired their weapons. The Devourers didn't even slow down. They walked through the stun blasts like they were rain. Then they returned fire. The feed cut to static as the camera was destroyed. "How many dead?" Young Me asked quietly. "Billions," the operations officer replied. "And counting. We've lost 16 more worlds in the last 3 days. They're advancing faster than we can evacuate." Young Me thought about Tejo, the human, the one they were all afraid of because he was too good at violence. She made a decision that would either save the Coalition or destroy it. "Bring the human to me," she ordered. The council refused her request. Too dangerous, they said. Unleashing a human in this crisis would be like fighting fire with explosives. But Captain Dong-Wu, who had spent weeks observing Tejo, made a different choice. He defied the council and brought Tejo to Coalition Command anyway. Tejo arrived wearing simple clothes and looking confused. "You asked for me?" Young Me showed him the footage. All of it. The destroyed colonies, the dead civilians, the helpless soldiers, the advancing Devourer forces that seemed unstoppable. She showed him projections that suggested the Coalition would fall completely within 6 months. Tejo watched everything in silence. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes took in every detail. When the footage ended, he asked one question. "Do you have tactical data on their forces, movement patterns, unit composition, response times?" "Yes," Young Me said. "Our military AI has been analyzing them for weeks." "Show me." They gave him access to everything. 3 hours of data that the Coalition's best strategists had studied for months. Tejo reviewed it all in silence, occasionally asking for specific details or different viewing angles. The command center staff watched him nervously, this human who looked so ordinary but moved with the precision of a predator. Finally, Tejo leaned back and rubbed his eyes. "Your AI is looking at this wrong. It's analyzing the Devourers like they're a conventional force, but they're not. They're a hive mind with distributed processing. That changes everything." "What do you mean?" Dong-Wu asked. Tejo began pointing at the tactical displays, his fingers moving quickly across the holographic interface. "Here, see this? They always advance in these patterns, not because it's the best tactical approach, but because they're connected to a central node that's coordinating them. These units here, they hesitate for exactly 0.3 seconds before responding to new threats. That's processing lag from the hive connection." He pulled up more footage. "And this armor that regenerates? It's impressive, but it needs energy. Watch here. After sustained fire, the regeneration slows down. Just slightly, but it's there. They're not invulnerable. They just heal faster than you can damage them with stun weapons." Young Me felt hope kindle in her chest for the first time in weeks. "Can we beat them?" Tejo hesitated. "Beat them? Maybe. But not like this. Not with your current approach. You're fighting them like you fight each other, trying to disable, contain, minimize harm. The Devourers don't care about any of that. They only understand destruction. To fight them, you need to match their violence, and that means... He trailed off, but everyone understood. It meant becoming something the Coalition had evolved beyond. It meant learning to kill. "I need a team," Tejo said finally. "Volunteers, people willing to do things that will probably give them nightmares. I need weapons designed to destroy, not disable. And I need access to a Devourer-occupied world where I can test some theories." The command center went silent. No one spoke. These peaceful beings looked at each other with uncertainty and fear. What Tejo was asking for went against everything they believed in, everything they had built their society on. "I'll go," a young voice said. Everyone turned. Sang-min stepped forward. He was young for a Valerian, barely into adulthood. His blue skin was still bright with youth. He had lost his entire family when his home colony fell to the Devourers. "I'll volunteer," Sang-min said again, his voice stronger. "I'm tired of being helpless. I'm tired of watching people die because we don't know how to fight back." "You understand what you're volunteering for?" Tejo asked gently. "I can't teach you violence without changing you. Can't show you how to kill without making you see the galaxy differently. There's no going back from this." "I know," Sang-min said. "But if I don't go back because the Devourers killed everyone I love, what's the difference? At least this way I'm choosing to act instead of choosing to hide." A second voice spoke up. "I'll join too." Jisoo emerged from the engineering section. She was a Tholian, her crystalline body refracting light in beautiful patterns. She was one of the Coalition's best military engineers, though military engineering in the Coalition mostly meant building better shields and faster ships. "I can modify weapons," she said, "make them more effective. If you're going to fight, you'll need equipment that works." Tejo looked at them both. Two young people volunteering for something they couldn't fully understand. He felt a weight settle on his shoulders, the weight of responsibility, of knowledge that would scar them. "Okay," he said quietly. "We'll need kinetic weapons. Railguns if you can build them, explosive charges, combat armor adjusted for high-stress environments, and a ship that can get us to Threshold 9 without being detected." "Threshold 9 is deep in Devourer territory," Dongwu protested. "It's a suicide mission." "Probably," Tejo agreed. "But their central hive node for this sector is there. If I'm right about their coordination system, we can disrupt it, create chaos in their ranks, buy the Coalition time to evacuate more worlds and regroup." Young Mai made her decision. "You have authorization, whatever you need. But Tejo, if this works, if you come back, the Council will want you to train more soldiers, to create a real military force. Are you prepared for that?" Tejo looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were consuming worlds, killing billions, destroying everything the Coalition had built. "I'm a soldier," he said finally. "It's what I was trained for, what I'm good at. I spent my entire life learning how to fight and kill efficiently. I never wanted to use those skills again, but here we are." "Sometimes the universe doesn't care what we want," he turned back to young me. "If I survive this, yes, I'll teach them. I'll build you an army, and I'll hate every second of it, because I know what it costs. I know what it does to people. But I'll do it anyway, because the alternative is watching the Devourers consume everything." 3 days later, a small stealth ship dropped out of orbit around Threshold 9. Inside were 3 beings: a human soldier who carried the weight of his extinct species' violent history, a young Valerian who wanted revenge more than peace, and a Tholian engineer who was about to learn that building weapons and using them were very different things. The mission was simple in concept: infiltrate the Devourer-occupied colony, sabotage their hive node, survive long enough to evacuate. In practice, They were 3 people against an army of 50,000 biomechanical nightmares. Coalition Command watched their helmet feeds and waited. They expected to witness 3 deaths. What they got instead would change the galaxy forever. The drop pod hit the surface of Threshold 9 with a bone-jarring impact. Taeho was out first, his railgun already scanning for threats. Sang-min followed, his hands shaking slightly on his weapon. Jisoo came last, carrying the engineering equipment and explosive charges they would need. The colony was a graveyard. Buildings stood empty, their windows broken like dead eyes. The streets were littered with debris and worse things that Taeho didn't let the others look at too closely. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear the Devourers moving. A constant sound like metal grinding against metal mixed with something organic and wet. "Stay close," Taeho whispered. "Move quiet. Watch your angles. If something moves, don't shoot unless I do first. Sound carries, and we want to stay unnoticed as long as possible." They moved through the ruins like ghosts. Taeho led, his movements smooth and controlled. He had explained the concept of tactical movement to them during the 3-day journey. How to use cover, how to minimize exposure, how to think about sight lines and sound discipline. But knowing and doing were different things. Sang-min nearly stepped on some debris that would have made noise. Taeho's hand shot out, stopping him before his foot came down. He pointed to an alternative path. Sang-min nodded, grateful and embarrassed. They encountered their first Devourer patrol 15 minutes in. 3 units, each the size of a large human, scanning the area with optical sensors that glowed red in the darkness. Taeho held up a closed fist. "Stop!" The universal signal. Everyone froze. Taeho observed the patrol for 90 seconds, counting intervals, watching patterns. Then he gestured to Jisoo. She understood and pulled out a small device she had built. An electromagnetic pulse generator, compact but powerful. She set it on a 10-second delay and placed it in their path. Taeho led them into cover behind a collapsed wall. They waited. The Devourers walked closer, their footsteps heavy and rhythmic. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The EMP detonated silently, just a flash of invisible energy. All 3 Devourers stopped moving simultaneously, their systems temporarily disabled. Taeho was already moving. He didn't use his gun. Too loud. Instead, he had something Jisoo had made him. A monomolecular blade, so sharp it could cut through their armor. What happened next took 4 seconds. Taeho moved like water, like shadow, like nothing Sang-min had ever seen. He struck at joints, at weak points in the Devourer's construction. His blade found gaps in their armor with surgical precision. By the time their systems rebooted, all 3 were disabled, their central processing units destroyed. "How did you know where to cut?" Jisoo whispered. "Saw it in the footage," Taeho replied quietly. "Every machine has weak points. You just have to know where to look. Come on, we need to keep moving." They penetrated deeper into the colony. Twice more they encountered patrols. Twice more they eliminated them silently. Taeho taught them with each encounter how to move, where to aim, when to strike, and when to hide. Sang-min was learning fast, his natural Valerian reflexes adapting to this new, violent reality. Jisoo struggled more, her peaceful nature rebelling against the necessity of destruction, but she persevered. The hive node was in the colony's central plaza, a massive pulsing structure of biomechanical tissue and advanced technology. It looked like a tumor growing out of the ground, covered in veins that glowed with strange light. Around it, hundreds of Devourers moved in synchronized patterns, all connected to the node's controlling intelligence. "That's a lot of enemies," Sang-min said, his voice tight with fear. "Yes," Taeho agreed. "Too many to fight directly, so we don't fight them. We make them fight each other." He explained the plan. Jisoo would plant explosive charges at 3 key structural points around the node. The explosions would damage but not destroy the node. disrupting its control signals. In the chaos, while the Devourers were confused and uncoordinated, they would plant the main charge directly on the node itself. "The margin for error is 0, Taeho said. "If even one thing goes wrong, we probably die. Are you both sure you want to do this?" Jisoo and Sang-min looked at each other, then back at Taeho. They nodded. "Then let's make some chaos." The first explosion lit up the night sky. One of the node's support structures collapsed in a shower of sparks and biological matter. The Devourers reacted instantly, but without coordination. Some moved toward the explosion. Others spun in circles. Their connection to the hive mind disrupted. A few began attacking each other, their friend or foe recognition failing. Second explosion. Third explosion. The plaza descended into madness. Devourers stumbling around, bumping into each other, their normally perfect coordination shattered. It was the opening Taeho needed. "Now!" he shouted, abandoning stealth for speed. They ran through the chaos. Taeho led, his railgun now active, firing precise shots that dropped any devourer that got too close. Sang-min followed, his own weapon barking, learning through necessity how to aim, how to compensate for recoil, how to kill. Jisoo ran between them, protecting the main explosive charge. A massive devourer, one of the shock troops 3 meters tall, stepped into their path. Its plasma weapon charged with a distinctive whine. Taeho didn't hesitate. He slid under its line of fire, came up inside its guard, and used the monomolecular blade to sever the connections between its weapon arm and central processor. The arm fell useless. He followed with a strike to its optical sensors, blinding it, then a precise cut to its neck area where the central processor was housed. The shock troop collapsed. Behind it, 2 more appeared. "Keep going!" Taeho yelled. "Get to the node, I'll hold them!" "We can't leave you!" Sang-min protested. "You're not leaving me! You're completing the mission! Go!" Sang-min and Jisoo ran for the node while Taeho engaged the shock troops. Coalition Command, watching through helmet feeds, saw something they would replay in military academies for generations. They saw a single human, armed with primitive kinetic weapons and a blade, fight 2 Devourer shock troops simultaneously. Taeho used everything. The environment, the enemy's size and strength against them, their reliance on plasma weapons that needed charge time. He moved constantly, never staying in one place, making them shoot at where he had been rather than where he was. He struck at weak points, at joints, at sensors. When his railgun ran dry, he grabbed a piece of debris and used it as a weapon. He was bleeding from multiple wounds. His armor was cracked. But he was still standing, still fighting, while both shock troops struggled with damaged systems. At the node, Jisoo placed the main charge while Sang-min provided cover fire. His aim was getting better, his movements more confident. Fear was transforming into something else, something harder, something focused. "Charge set!" Jisoo yelled. 30 seconds! Taeho! Sang-min shouted. "Time to go!" Taeho drove his blade into the last shock troop's central processor and ran. His body screamed at him, injuries that would kill a coalition being barely slowing him down. They sprinted for the extraction point, the timer counting down in their heads. 20 seconds, 15, 10. They dove behind a reinforced wall as the charge detonated. The explosion was massive, tearing the hive node apart. The shockwave flattened buildings. The light was blinding. When the smoke cleared, the node was gone, and with it, the coordination of 50,000 devourers across the sector. They stood motionless, confused, their hive mind connections severed. Some began to wander aimlessly. Others shut down completely. The extraction ship appeared overhead. They ran for it. Taeho carrying Jisoo, who had twisted her leg in the explosion. Sang-min covered their retreat, his weapon steady now, his fear replaced by something like pride. They made it aboard just as Devourer units began to reboot, their individual processors taking over. The ship rocketed into orbit, leaving Threshold 9 behind. In the Coalition Command Center, everyone sat in stunned silence. They had watched 3 beings infiltrate an army, cause catastrophic damage, and escape alive. They had watched tactics and strategies they had never imagined. They had watched violence used with such precision, it became almost an art form. Young Mi looked at Captain Dongwu. "We need to prepare the training facilities. If this is what one human can do, what could he teach an army?" Dongwu nodded slowly. "The galaxy is about to change. For better or worse, we've learned how to fight back." The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of healing equipment. Taeho lay on a bed, his body covered in injuries that would have killed any Coalition citizen 3 times over. But he was healing. Already the smaller cuts were closing. The deeper wounds were starting to knit together. His metabolism worked overtime, burning through calories, fixing damage with terrifying efficiency. Dr. Hae-jin watched the monitors in amazement. "Your species is remarkable. These injuries should take weeks to heal. You'll be walking tomorrow." "Probably," Taeho agreed, his voice tired. "Humans are hard to kill. It was necessary on Earth. Everything there wanted to kill us." In another room, Sang-min and Jisoo were being debriefed. They looked different than they had 3 days ago. Older somehow. Their eyes carried something new, something hard. They had seen violence up close, had participated in it, had learned what it meant to fight for survival. "How do you feel?" Young Mi asked them gently. Sang-min took a long time to answer. "Different. I keep seeing it when I close my eyes. The Devourers falling, the explosions, Taeho fighting. I thought it would feel good getting revenge, but it just feels heavy." "That's normal," Young Mi said. "Violence changes everyone who touches it. The fact that you feel this weight means you haven't lost yourself to it." Jisoo spoke next, her crystalline body dimmer than usual. "He was right. Taeho, when he said we couldn't unlearn it. I understand now how to destroy things, how to hurt efficiently, how to kill. I can't forget that. Can't pretend I don't know." The Coalition Council convened 3 days later. All 12 species sent their representatives. The chamber was filled with holographic projections and translation systems. The topic, what to do about the human and his methods. Hyun Woo, a representative from the Cravian species, spoke first. "The numbers don't lie. Since the Threshold 9 operation, Devourer coordination in 3 sectors has collapsed. We've successfully evacuated 17 colonies that would have been lost. Civilian casualties have dropped by 70% in combat zones. 1 human and 2 volunteers accomplished what our entire fleet couldn't." Sun Hee, a philosopher from the Tholian homeworld, responded. "But at what cost? We've spent 1,000 years building a civilization based on peace, on resolving conflicts without violence. If we embrace what Taeho represents, we become something else. Something we promised ourselves we would never be again." "We promised ourselves a lot of things," Captain Dongwu said quietly. "We promised our citizens they would be safe, protected. We can't keep that promise with kind words and peaceful intentions, not against an enemy like the Devourers." The debate raged for hours. Some argued that creating a military force would fundamentally change Coalition society. Others insisted that society couldn't exist at all if they were all dead. Some suggested finding a middle path, using Taeho's knowledge without fully embracing violence. Others pointed out that warfare didn't work halfway, that you either committed to it or you lost. Finally, they brought Taeho before the council. He stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by holographic representatives of species he had never seen before. His injuries were mostly healed, though he still moved carefully. He looked small compared to some of the larger species, but everyone in the room felt the weight of his presence. "Taeho of Earth," the council speaker began, "we have reviewed your actions on Threshold 9. We have studied your methods. We have debated what your existence means for our civilization. Before we vote on how to proceed, We wanted to hear from you. What do you think we should do?" Tejo stood silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was clear and measured. "I can teach you to fight. I can show you how to build weapons, develop tactics, train soldiers. I can give you the tools to survive against the devourers. But I need you to understand what you're asking for." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives across species lines. "War changes everything it touches. It changes the people who fight. It changes the societies that support them. It changes how you think about problems. When you have a military, suddenly military solutions start looking more attractive. When you know how to hurt people, hurting them becomes easier each time." My species learned this lesson over and over. We became very good at violence, very efficient at destruction, and it made us powerful, yes, but it also made us lonely. We fought each other for thousands of years, built weapons that could destroy our entire world. We nearly wiped ourselves out dozens of times. He paused, his expression distant. "You've built something beautiful here. A galaxy at peace, species working together, no war, no weapons designed to kill. I spent my whole life in a society that had war, and I would give anything to have grown up in what you've built instead. But the universe doesn't care what we want. It doesn't care about fair. The devourers are here, and they're going to keep coming unless someone stops them. And stopping them requires being willing and able to match their violence. So here's my answer. You should create a military, train soldiers, build weapons, learn to fight. Not because it's good, not because you want to, but because the alternative is watching everything you've built get consumed by an enemy that doesn't care about your values. But," he continued, his voice stronger now, "you need to do it carefully, with rules, with oversight, with the understanding that this is a necessary evil, not a good thing. Train your soldiers to protect, not to conquer. Build weapons for defense, not aggression. And the moment the devourers are defeated, you need to have a plan for stepping back, for returning to peace. Because the hardest part isn't learning to fight, it's remembering how to stop." The chamber fell silent as his words sank in. Finally, Sun He spoke. "And if we ask you to train this military, to teach us violence, knowing what it will cost, would you do it?" Tejo met her crystalline eyes. "Yes, because I'm a soldier. It's what I know, what I'm good at. I hate it, but I'll do it anyway. Someone has to, and I'd rather it be me, someone who understands the cost, than someone who thinks war is glorious." The council voted. It wasn't unanimous. Many voted against, their objections recorded for history. But the majority voted yes. The coalition would create a military. Tejo would train them. They would learn to fight. Training began 2 weeks later. Sang Min and Jisoo were among the first volunteers, along with thousands of others from across coalition space. They came from peaceful worlds, gentle societies, lives that had never known violence. Tejo looked at them all, these innocent beings about to learn terrible things, and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He taught them everything: hand-to-hand combat, weapons handling, tactical thinking, strategic planning, how to move, how to shoot, how to survive. But he also taught them something more important. He taught them why they fought. Not for glory, not for conquest, but to protect, to defend. To make sure that peace had a chance to exist again. 3 months later, the Devourers launched their next major offensive. They hit a coalition colony world with overwhelming force, expecting the same easy victory they had achieved before. Instead, they met the coalition's new Special Operations Division, soldiers trained by a human, led by Sang Min, Jisoo, and others who had learned in the crucible of Threshold 9. These weren't the peaceful security forces of before. These were warriors, protectors, defenders willing to pay terrible prices for strategic victories. The Devourers lost. For the first time in their existence, prey had evolved teeth. In his quarters, Tejo watched the battle reports and allowed himself a small, tired smile. The coalition was learning, adapting, surviving. They would never be as naturally violent as humans had been. They would never love war the way some humans had. But they had learned to do what was necessary. Dr. Hyojin found him there, standing by the window, looking out at the stars. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Being thawed? Teaching us to fight?" Tejo considered the question. He thought about his world, dead and cold, his species, extinct except for him, the violence he had seen and caused, the peaceful beings he had changed forever. "No," he said finally. "My people were alone because we couldn't stop fighting each other. But you're different. You fight only when you must, only to protect. Maybe that's what we were supposed to be. Maybe this is why humans evolved the way we did, not to conquer, but to be guardians, protectors. The ones willing to stand in the dark so others could live in the light." He looked at her. "You thought out a human and found him too powerful. But power isn't good or evil. It's just power. What matters is how you use it. And you're using it to defend everything you've built, everything worth protecting." "That's not too powerful," he said softly. "That's just powerful enough." Outside, the war continued. But for the first time since the Devourers arrived, the Coalition had hope. They had learned from humanity's last soldier. Learned that peace wasn't the absence of violence, but the will to defend what mattered. And in the end, that made all the difference.